guys, welcome back to another episode of Perspectives. If you're new here, welcome. As always, my heart is to open conversations about things that aren't talked about. I'm not here to change your mind or to tell you what to believe or how to think, but to look at other people's perspectives and encourage you to seek the Lord, to ask Him to search your heart, and to just gain your opinion and know why you believe what you believe. But also to open conversations. Well, thank you for being on the podcast this month. This is Haley. We've been friends for, I think we said 5 years. We just recently talked about this.
2017, however long ago that was.
That's crazy. It feels like it's been way longer than that. But we did 2 missionary training schools together, and we're just really close friends. And she is going to be today talking about sharing her story and talking about masturbation and her struggle with pornography. So let's just get started. How old were you whenever you first got introduced to pornography? Because that started before masturbation, right?
Yes, it sparked the curiosity.
Yeah.
So I want to say I remember having dreams when I was way younger, but still the innocence was there, didn't understand.
Like sexual dreams.
I want to say I came across pornography when I was 11.
Wow. Was it through the internet?
It was actually through a book that I don't want to call my mom out, but it wasn't her fault. She didn't mean to. She probably forgot it was there. But she had this hope chest, and she's very sentimental and saves everything. And she had this book that maybe was given to her. I don't know. Maybe it was a gift whenever her and my dad got married, but it was sex positions and stuff like that. And it was drawings, but they were very realistic.
Yikes.
And my mind was like, what the heck is this? But of course, you're still curious because you're just like, this is new, but this has got to be something. I'm confused. So that was kind of the open door to it. Not someone sharing a healthy view of it, not someone, telling me about sex, but just stumbling across it in a book.
Yeah. So from there, how did it progress? Just continued to look for it, or?
Yeah. So shortly after that, maybe a year later, we got little iPods. That was just whenever I feel old saying that, but it's just phones and stuff were coming out, and they had the little iPods or whatever. We got one that me and my brother could share, and my parents had just plugged in the Wi-Fi, and I feel so old saying this, but we had just got Wi-Fi for the first time, so we were, connected to the internet in ways we'd never been before. And so I don't really remember. I think I sought it out. I think there was memories from the book. And so it's you have this iPod and Wi-Fi, and you're literally connected to figure out anything that you wanted to. I think there was still that curiosity of what was that? Is that really a thing? Do other people know about this? Let me see. And typed in probably sex or whatever or something like that. And then, from then on, porn popped up, and that was how I was introduced to it. And I guess I want to say hooked to it. It was an addiction for a long time, so probably hooked to it. But that was the beginning of that.
Gotcha. And then with that, you also explored yourself, and that's when masturbation started.
Yeah.
How old were you when masturbation started?
I'm gonna say 12, probably around the time that my period came along and stuff like that. So everything just kind of hit me like it was like this domino effect.
Mm-hmm.
And, nothing was ever explained to me. Sex was never talked about to me. Periods were never talked about. My mom was just kind of like, hey, one day you'll start bleeding. Don't freak out. Well, yeah, that's great.
Yep.
But in her defense, she did not have a healthy upbringing, so no one
Mm.
knew how to communicate it to her. So she just kind of didn't know how to communicate it to me either. So I understand that now. But yeah, I want to say that the masturbation came probably whenever my period happened, and then it's just kind of like, whoa, there's a lot happening down there. What's going on? And then just explored and connected masturbation with pornography, and it was a thing that went together for a while. So,
Dang. And you like grew up in church, you had a relationship with the Lord through all this time, right?
oh yeah, I've been in church my whole life. I got, saved at like 8 or 9, a young age. Very much knew, knew in my spirit that it wasn't okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
there's that the Holy Spirit was still there, even in my youth and in that young mindset. It was like I knew, like you feel something's off about it.
Yeah.
But then weird because you're told in church that this is a good thing, but it's like, but this feels
You're
weird.
told in
But
church like what's a good thing.
well, I guess like sex and marriage, but then you're like exploring this and you just like, I don't know how do you like navigate
Yeah.
this, and what does it look like outside of marriage then if we have all these feelings and stuff. It can be very confusing because we're not told what to do with those feelings
Mm-hmm.
outside of the and stuff. So
Yeah.
um
In that time, because you're married now, but before you were married, um, did you ever seek out somebody to process with, or was it something that you kept to yourself and kind of
I,
tried to figure it out yourself?
right, it was something that was never talked about, so it was scary. It's like no one talked about it, so there I just didn't feel like there was any place for me to go.
Mm,
It's like the more I got into it, the older I got, the more I realized this is sin, this is wrong. Like I
mm,
feel dirty, I feel nasty, I feel guilty. So, but what do you do with it? I don't have an outlet. There's no place for me to go to get help. So I just carry around this guilt and shame, not knowing what to do with it. Just like,
yeah. Do you feel like before you got married, did you find freedom in it, or was it something that you feel like you found freedom or are finding freedom after marriage?
definitely after marriage. And the reason, like, I sought freedom so hard, like every time it would happen, and I failed,
Mhm.
there was like this feeling of failure, of like I just can't get my life together. Here I am, doing devotions with people, going to church on Sunday, living this Christian life, but here's my secret sin, and I do it, and I'm a failure, and I feel like it's written across my head. But it's like I don't know, I couldn't get rid of it. Like
Mm,
I would cry, I would repent, and I'm like, okay, it's gonna be good. I'm never gonna do it again.
mm.
Countdown, 1 day without, 2 days, like a week, and then boom, you hit it again, and the whole cycle just repeats itself. But at the time, I was the only one affected by it, so it's like no one else was affected by my sin.
Mm.
So I guess there was no real driving point to really surrender it. And like there was no effects except for my shame and guilt that I walked around with. That I guess didn't know it, but I was okay with it because I wasn't fighting it hard enough or giving it to God. I don't know, really releasing it and surrendering it.
Yeah.
But whenever I got married and had my daughter, you start to realize that it affects other
Mm.
people. I'm now seeing it affect my marriage. I'm looking at my little baby, realizing that this could be something that she struggles with, and I
Mm.
don't want to struggle with it still, and telling my daughter that might struggle with it, oh, like, it's just, you're never gonna get rid of it, like, it's just
Yeah.
there. I wanted to see freedom, and I just continued to bring it to God. So I would say it definitely, the Lord freed me from this during marriage and walking through my pregnancy with Selah. So
Do you think, in your singleness, that if you would have had more accountability, that that would have helped you walk out like that more like in freedom previously?
I think absolutely. Yeah. I think if there was a safe place for me, and that if someone was open and didn't like make me feel that it was this yucky, disgusting thing that I just shouldn't do, and just be like, hey, we sin. I get it. Look, you're going to mess up. It's okay. Let's talk about it. You know, let's meet up once a week. Let's
Mm,
talk about it. Tell me if you fail. Tell me if you looked at something. No judgment. Like, I'm here to love on you and
mm,
walk through this with you.
mhm.
I think that would have made a huge difference in me being able to, get it before the Lord and really surrender it to Him, and watch Him, um, claim that part of my life and really give it to Him or whatever. But there wasn't that, and maybe that was on me for not stepping out and not caring what people thought and just
Mm.
finding the help needed. So that could have been definitely my fault. But I think it also plays a role in the church, and not, reaching out halfway to me, and giving me, or just friends in general, I don't know, stepping
Yeah, I
out and
mean, we've never really until recently talked about it openly. And it's
yeah,
like, I don't know, like why don't we
I
talk about it? I
know.
guess because it is something that's like hidden, but I feel like closer to you because like you've been open with me in like
Mhm.
that vulnerable place. So, like I don't are you discipling somebody right now, and do you feel like you would now bring that up in a conversation and be like, "Hey, like I totally want to be open and like be here for you. Do you struggle with this masturbation, pornography? Like do you struggle with any of that? Have you struggled with it?"
I am not discipling anybody right now, anyone right now. But it's definitely something that I'm now super confident in, and just like, I want to see this thing like destroyed in people's
Mm,
lives. Like, even whenever you asked me about the podcast, at first I was like, "Ooh, that's a touchy topic," and it really wasn't that long ago. So then it's like, it's easier to talk about something that's not fresh. But
absolutely.
no, this was a year ago, and your podcast was the same thing. You were like, "Well, this is hard because it's not like 10 years ago. This was
Yeah.
like pretty soon." So same for
Still
me.
walking through it, it's not like, "Oh, I'm good. Like I'm perfectly fine and healed and whatever." Like there is still that wrestle and struggle with
Mhm.
your struggles.
Sure, I think it's so easy to stand up and be like, I am completely freed. Hear me. Here's my testimony. This was a decade ago. But when it's something still fresh, and you're still wrestling with God on it, and still having to very much depend on Him in this area,
Mhm.
um, it can be very scary still to put it out there. Um, but yeah, whenever you asked me about the podcast, my first reaction was, what about what people think?" And then I was like, no, like, I don't even need to care about that, because first of all, this can further the kingdom.
Mhm.
There's someone else that needs to hear that God can free you from that thing that you feel is impossible to be freed from, because that's how it felt for me. And even though I'm still, I'm freed from it, but it's still something that I'm walking with God with. Um, this is still something that someone needs to hear, and I
Mhm.
need to get into myself and be that person for someone that I didn't have for me.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Putting my testimony out there and just being like, I'm
Yeah.
open. I am willing to get, to, meet with you one on one, and to hear you, and there's no judgment, because God's got this, and
Mm,
you continue to walk with him in it and give it to him, like you're gonna see freedom in it.
that's
um
so good.
but yeah, I think this podcast is the first kind of step out there. I've discussed it in my comfortable circles, like my close knit friends,
Hmm.
and I think that's always where it should start. You don't need to like get on a megaphone and just blast. I think it's good to start talking about what God's done in your life, especially something that's fresh in a small circle. But then, whenever God tells you to take that step of faith and share it to more, then to be faithful with that, because you don't know who's listening and who it can minister to and impact.
So
So,
true. I'm glad that you said yes and that you're sharing it. But also the fact that, like, I feel like from my perspective, a lot of people that do talk about pornography, I don't really hear anything about masturbation in the
yeah,
church, or I hear it from the world, maybe like that side of it. But in the church realm and with Christians, it's not like I don't hear it talked about ever. Um Pornography I hear talked about for a guy's perspective. I don't ever hear it from like a girl's perspective and struggling with it. And it kind of sucks because it is a both-sided thing. Like it's not just a guy's struggle, but it is a girl struggle too. So if a girl's listening to this, I'm hoping that they feel like they're not alone and that, yeah, that they're not wrestling with it alone. How would you say your relationship with your mom now? Do you feel like you can talk to her more about things, or is it still like a taboo thing? Don't talk about it.
um it's pretty open now. It's very different. I've had raw conversations with her and like talk to her about how some of these things have hurt me, um and stuff like that. And it's opened up a place for forgiveness and for my mom to realize the places that were hurt. And so we walked through that and we talked about it, and now it's something that I can go to her and talk to her about. And um it's a very comfortable and safe place now. Our relationship is amazing now.
Praise God.
So
So after you got married, well, this one question, before you got married and you were struggling with it, did you think that once you got married that it would be something that, oh, I'm not going to struggle with this anymore, like this is totally, I'm freed from this because now I can have sex with my husband?
100%.
Yeah.
You nailed it.
Yeah.
That was really my mindset. Just like, whenever I hold on, before I got engaged, I'm wrestling with it, I'm giving it to the Lord. And whenever I got engaged, I was like, it's okay, I just gotta make it to my wedding day. Like, don't do anything, look at anything until my wedding day, and then
Yeah.
whenever I have it, it's gonna be gone.
Yeah.
God. I definitely thought that desire and that would be like fulfilled, and that it wouldn't be a struggle anymore, which is
Dang.
crazy, because I would say it kind of got worse for a season.
Wow.
So
Dang.
yeah, that's false for anyone else who's listening. Deal with it now.
Yeah. Um, I'm also rewinding a little bit too. You did mention that whenever you did start with pornography and stuff, that it affected you in the way you saw men. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it definitely corrupted my mind.
Yeah.
Of course, opening up to pornography just corrupts you in general. But I struggled for a while. It wasn't throughout my whole like season of struggling with pornography and masturbation. It was kind of for a short period that I would, watch. And then whenever I'd go out in public, there was just these like images, like
Mm,
you'd be talking to a man and it was just super uncomfortable, because I just think about what I just saw, and
mm,
then here's a man before me, and it's like, oh, this is really uncomfortable, because
mm.
I don't think this is not okay at all, because
Yeah.
it was starting to affect me outside of that private place.
Yeah.
um it stepped out of the privacy of that room and into my public uh my public world with people and
That's
stuff,
so
and
uncomfortable.
it's so uncomfortable. So I was like, no, we're not doing this.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know why that was just a seasonal thing. Maybe I know I went to the Lord with it. I went to the Lord with all of this, everything that I struggled with the whole time. I would just continuously
Hmm.
bring it to God. I even wrote down in my journal for years. In the Bible, Paul talks about like a thorn in his side or whatever. I don't know what he was referencing to, but my mind was like, that's my thorn in my side. Like,
Yeah.
masturbation is mine. So like that's how intense it was. So I always like gave it to God or whatever. But for whatever reason that went away. I
Do
guess
you feel like you
maybe.
got numb to it at one point where it was just like it became like normal? Or did you
So
just like completely didn't like outside world didn't see guys?
right, surprisingly, I think what you're talking about like is numb to pornography and masturbation. Like I just do it and then I continue on with my life and I'm just numb to the feelings,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Surprisingly, no. And I don't know if it's because of my relationship with God, because I still
Mm.
had a very close relationship with the Lord. Like, and I think that, you can still have a good relationship with God and you still have sin. So
Oh yeah.
my relationship with God was still very strong. And that conviction was very strong. And I think
Mm.
that's why it was so miserable for me too, because there was like this wrestling, just this constant wrestling with it. Um, and I think it was because my heart was like, I don't want this. I
Mm.
genuinely don't want this. And I think my heart was, God, I don't ever want to become numb to it. Even if I've never prayed that prayer, I think that was absolutely my heart was,
Mm.
I never want to settle in this. I want to be free from it throughout that whole decade of wrestling with it. So I never got numb to it. There was always this conviction, but also heavily mixed in with condemnation and guilt and shame and just feeling worthless and filthy.
Yeah.
So
So at what point did you like tell your now husband um that you struggled with that?
super early on
Before
because
marriage?
before marriage, because I think I wanted a safe place. I was
Mm.
desperate for that safe place and for someone to hear me and see me and help me with it. And Lee was the first person that I felt wouldn't judge me, and I knew he would stand by me no matter
Mm.
what. Even if he didn't know how to help me, I just needed him to know this is my struggle and I need you praying with me. And I've been wrestling with this for a long time. So I told him maybe a month into our engagement or dating, not a month into dating, probably a few months into dating or whatever. I probably sat down with him and was like, hey, just want to be transparent with you and that, in this struggle of mine, because it's a heavy part of my life, and shared that with him. And he's been a rock through it. He's been
Yeah.
amazing.
Did he ever struggle with masturbation?
So he did, but it wasn't to my degree, of course. His was kind of like the high school boy that just did it, but
Mm-hmm.
it was never an addiction for him.
Mm.
Um, it was something that he just like did for a season and was like, screw it, I don't like this. I don't even know why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And
Dang.
so he never had a tie to it and an addiction for it, which was great because then, okay, you can really actually help me because
Yeah.
this isn't struggle too, and we're not gonna like stumble together with this. I can share and be super transparent and vulnerable with you, and you're the strong one
Dang.
in the relationship. So
Dang. So you don't feel like he treated you differently or acted any different like when you had opened up to him about it?
no, like not at
Dang.
all.
That's
Um,
awesome.
super open to it, and just like even when I first shared it, it was like I told him I squished a bug or something. He was like, okay, like
Yeah.
that's a weird way to put it, but he was just like not phased by it at all. He was like, I love you no matter what.
Mm.
And we worked through this, and
What a guy. Good
yeah,
job.
what a
Oh
Right.
gosh. So what were things that he did as like y'all were, I mean, obviously he was a safe space. Um, even like the fact that you felt like you can be vulnerable with him so early just tells a lot by how much like you trusted him and stuff. But what were things that he did to help you walk in freedom? Were there any things that he did before marriage, after marriage? Because I think that's helpful for somebody like if I marry someone that struggles with it so hard, like I want to know how I can support and love that person well, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah. Um, of course, like during our engagement, we had, the struggles because the feelings were so strong and
Oh,
we were
yeah.
like, we're saving ourselves for marriage. So of course there was like struggles there and we had to put boundaries up, but I feel like that was such a blur because it was just like your wedding planning and everything. The real struggle was whenever we got married and you're done with the wedding stuff, you're no longer engaged, and then you get back into the normal, like you get married and you get back to the normal. you know I get hit with all this temptation and stuff, and that's when I was like, oh, it wasn't gonna go away after I had sex, like it's still here. So we actually set up kind of a thing together, like whenever we would be intimate together, and if I would struggle in my mind, I would say, hey, we need to stop. I'm struggling, and I would just be super open and transparent with him, like my mind is in the
Mm,
gutter, like I am thinking, I'm not thinking of you. And that
mm,
was very, very hard to tell him. It was harder to tell him that than to tell him when we were dating that I struggled with this.
dang.
It was very hard to look at him and say, I love you, but for some reason I'm not thinking of you during this time. And I was very concerned. I was shook because I didn't know that this was going to continue into my marriage and that
Mhm.
this was going to affect me and him in the way that it did. And this is me being super transparent, and this is a little hard, but it's real. It's real
Yeah.
life, and other people struggle with it too. And it's hard to talk about, but it's real. So yeah, I would just be like, hey, I'm struggling. I would even tell him, I hate to tell you this, but my mind is not on you. And so you could tell that he was kind of hurt, but he was like,
Mm,
she's not trying to hurt me.
mm,
This isn't something that she wants. So let me help her. Like he would just be like, okay, let's pray. So we would stop and we would pray. Another tool that really helped was honestly putting on worship music. So we just take a moment before and just be like, let's get in the space of like, this is about me and you.
mm.
And throw out, my past sins and the things that the enemy's trying to put into my mind. And these habits, they were just habits that
Yeah.
after a decade of looking at things and stuff, they weren't just going to go away overnight.
It's
Like,
true. It's like literally a rewiring of your brain of like,
right.
this isn't true, like the way you were created to think or like be. So rewiring it to be the way God created to be, man and wife together, dang.
And that's time.
Yeah.
Um, so this is a decade of a struggle, something that I looked at. I get married, my little mind is just like, it's gone. And it's not. The struggle isn't now looking at pornography. Now the struggle is thinking about it, because
Mm,
even looking at it, it's something that I did for a decade. And now the battle went from the screen, just not looking at a screen, to now it's in my head.
yeah.
And really hard. Like it was just, the battle's now in my head. It was always in my head, but it just became more real to me that this is a real struggle in me,
Yeah.
um, that I've really got to wrestle with the Lord. Um, so yeah, we set up a time before of just like prayer. I just had to be super vulnerable with him and being like, hey, I'm struggling, and just stop and just bring the Lord into it. Kick this out, bring God in.
Mm,
And we had to do that for a couple of months, and then it would get better. And then every now and then I'd be like, hey, I'm struggling again. So we just go back to it. And that was just our way of combating against this, and him helping me, and um you know making it about us and not that sin, and just trying to kick that out.
Mm,
So,
dang. It's crazy though, because even as you said, when you were younger, how it was just affecting you, but the reality is it doesn't just affect you. Like, even though you felt like that in the moment, like in the long run, it affects, like, I talked about this in my last episode, or Chad talked about this, and saying how like it affects your future spouse,
mhm.
affects your marriage, it affects like future generations to come. And I
Yes.
love that you thought about um your daughter Selah, and just thinking about her and like not wanting her to like struggle with
Mm,
that, like generational things, you know. Um yeah, it's crazy. So with, I know we've like related to this before, like we didn't really have a sex talk when we were younger. Like yeah, that was not something I really talked about with my mom or anything. There was like maybe one moment where I asked her a question and I was just like, I'm not going to do that again.
mine.
Yeah, never mind. So you just kind of figure things out and just put things together, or at least I did, just figured it out. I didn't necessarily watch porn, but yeah, I just figured things out and Google things, and you're like, oh, what does that mean? And yeah, which is terrible. It's terrible. Don't recommend. But as a mom now, how would you walk that out with your children and or your child and future children?
Hmm. Well, very different.
Hmm.
I don't work it out very different. Like I said, no judgment on my mom and dad.
Same.
They did, you know, they thought was best. I don't know. Um, but I've learned a lot from it because of the pain that I went through. Um, Walking forward, I definitely will 100% have a sit down talk when I feel like my kids are mature enough. I don't think it's age has to do with it, yes, but I think whenever your children are mature enough to receive that topic,
I
but
think
I would,
also it's difficult because even if they're not mature enough, sometimes outside sources can come
yeah,
in and it's like, well, they weren't mature enough, but
yeah,
they're finding it. It's everywhere now. Like,
very true. Sadly, that's just the world that we're a part of.
mm,
Is just reaching for our kids and trying to instill that in them at a very young age whenever they just need to live their innocent life, and it's just stripped from them. But I think at that point it's just kind of like, I'm just going to have to be real and vulnerable
mm,
with you and give it to you, and then we're going to combat what the world's trying to put into you with what God says about it,
mm,
and keep that relationship and that topic very open, um, because you don't want it to be very open and them getting it from the world. You want it to be very open in the home, and that was
mm.
what I didn't have. It was very closed door, like very closed door. So, like I told you, I like would be out of pads and just be like terrified to ask for
Oh,
more.
that's so sad.
Like trembling. I need more of these things. I don't even want to say what they are because that's just disgusting. It wasn't. It was a
Yeah.
part of life, and it was not a bad thing. But teaching your children and my children that these things are beautiful things.
Mm,
Sex is, God created it. Like, let's look it up right here. This is what it's for. It's for, a husband and a wife, for intimacy with them and to continue godly families and generations. So giving them that, this is what God says about it, and the healthy and beautiful view of it, because the
mm,
world just tainted it into this disgusting thing, and it breaks my heart. And then just keeping the conversation super open.
mm.
Do you have any questions? Like, I'm here to answer them. um if you don't feel comfortable asking me, write it on a note. I don't know, like, let's just keep it open, because I want to be a safe place for my daughter and for my kids, so that if any of my children, I hope not, but the world that we live in,
Mm.
sin is a thing. they will have struggles, and I've come to accept that. It's how we combat it and deal with it that, matters. That if my kids come to me and I want them to feel and know that mom and dad are a safe place to say, hey, I'm struggling with porn, or I'm struggling with thoughts of this, or with masturbation. Can you help me? So yeah, I just want to be a safe place for my kids and for anyone, actually.
Yeah. I did like you mentioned that you had a friend that was super open with her family, and just it wasn't like something weird to talk about. And I think
Yeah.
that's really cool because it's like, if you don't make it weird, then it's not weird. Like, it is something sacred and not something to like joke about and, whatever, like talk nasty about. But it is something, if you're open about it, then like she was totally
Mhm.
fine talking about it and stuff. That was like encouraging for me because I was just like, huh, okay, cool. Like, it's okay to talk about these things and not feel like uncomfortable or weird and like, oh, this is weird. Like, sometimes it is going to feel weird, but you push through and then it's just like, whatever. Like, okay. Is there anything else that you would like to say in the podcast or this episode?
I feel like I've listened to some of your podcasts, and I feel like everyone's advice was like, reach out, find someone.
It's
um,
literally all the like, I feel like most sin, I want to say all, but I feel like there may be, I don't know. I feel like it's all that, like, the enemy wants to hide things. And so once you speak it out and like you bring it to the light, you go to somebody with it, it's just, it makes things better. All the advice seems the same.
yeah. You realize, like, wait a second, everyone has their crap, everyone has their stuff. Like, we're hiding it, but really, everyone's in this together.
Mhm.
Like, we're all striving to, give all of these things to God, and just to, welcome Him in to
Mm.
transform us and free us from these things. So everyone's got their baggage and their stuff. It shouldn't be a shocker when someone goes to someone in the church or not and
Mm.
says, hey, I deal with da da da. We shouldn't be shocked.
Mm.
Like,
That's so
where do you
true.
think we're at, heaven? Like, we're not there yet, so we shouldn't be shocked. We live in a fallen world. We live with, you know, the devil's here. He's a real thing. He's out to literally crush us and destroy us. So I just, for other people that are on the receiving end of someone going to them and being vulnerable and transparent, please don't be shocked.
Mm.
Like, just welcome them and say, okay, you're taking the first steps. Let's do this. This is not against flesh and blood. This is
Mm.
against spiritual forces. I literally just read that. So if someone's coming out to you for help, then help them, please. I feel like the church has just really got to get on board with that, really got to work on that one.
Yeah.
But being the person that's struggling with it, I think there's truth in what everyone else said in the past podcast, is finding someone. And sometimes for me, I did go to a few people and I didn't get the help.
Mm.
So I think the right person will be able to help you. And I think that's whenever you need to take some time to be like, okay, God, who? Like, who
Mm.
do I need to go to? Like, because sometimes grasping for something, you put it out there, and then you can be left in an awkward situation where you're just like, okay, well, I stepped out and that didn't work. It happened to me.
That's
Um,
hard. That's hard when you step out. That's hard enough to step out. And then when you step out and it's like, well, that went nowhere. That's not, nothing came of that. So
yep,
do I have to
I'll
do it again?
just take my sin back with me and walk away with it and figure out what
Dang.
to do for myself, I guess. But yeah, I think taking a moment to think about, who's someone that's actually close in my life, who's someone that has shared or expressed that they really care for me and
Mm.
are here for me. Because not everyone's there for you in the long run. And I'm not saying that in a mean way,
Mm-hmm.
but people have different purposes in your lives. And I think looking around your circle of people and saying, who are the ones that are close to me that I can go to them and they will hear me and
Mm.
help me with this. So just taking the time with the Lord and just being like, give me the strength to do this, and give me the person to go to, because it can feel scary. This podcast was scary, but I'm
Oh,
doing it.
you're awesome.
So, and I'm actually enjoying this a lot. I love that I'm getting to literally just crush the devil and just be like, I'm free, and now
Yeah.
other people can be free. So just step out there and do it. You can ask the Lord for the strength, and it's going to be scary, but you're going to get the words out, and you're going to share that deep, dark thing that was scary to say, and it's going to be nothing.
Mm.
It's going to feel like nothing,
Yeah, lighter. Yeah.
Yeah. And those are your steps towards watching God free you and change your life and give you victory.
That's so good. Dang. Geez, thank you so much for being vulnerable, sharing, and like, yeah, being on this episode. I so appreciate it and just honor you in stepping out and sharing this because, like you said, it's your first time. And I just pray that you find a deeper freedom in this from sharing it. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. As I mentioned in this episode, I would love for you to seek the Lord and hear his voice for your life. So if you're questioning, like, how do I do that? I do have resources on my YouTube channel on how to hear God's voice and sharing that. So that'll be in the link down below. You can check that out. Other than that, I would love for your feedback. Feel free to reach out to me. I have my number linked down below, and then you can follow me on Instagram as well. So thanks for listening. Bye.